Welcome to the third episode of our podcast Academia. Today, the subject we are going to debate is to what extent does socialism work? João will defend the socialism and Pedro will be defending the capitalism. My first question will be to you, João. What are the main failures in capitalism?
Firstly, hello to everybody. And I would like to say that the main problem with capitalism is that the monetary system and the relationship between the employer and the employee is established in the principle that the employee must work to the employer in order to the latter to gain profit. In a socialist economy, all the industry, political system and the economy are goods of the collective, and their profits are for the society as a collective, and in the best interest of all citizens of the country that has the socialist system. I would also like to say that no society or economy today is fully capitalist. The problems that were affecting capitalism some 100 years ago were I can say this. The problems were overcome by socialist measures. For example, free healthcare for everybody, access to education, the establishment of a minimum wage, the reduction of the number of hours per day of work by the employees. And all this was accomplished by trade unions, by socialist movements. The problems that capitalism had, the exploration and the exploitation of resources and of people, the dominance that is nowadays it's a very, very serious problem, dominance of multinational and big banks across the world that dominate the trade and the economies. These multinationals, or for example, Nestlé or Coca-Cola, exploit the resources in countries that do not have the power to deal with them, and leads to a depletion of the environment and the exhausting of populations, and populations being their welfare being is neglected by these multinationals that only care about profit. And socialism is all about the common interest and the respect for the common interest. The way to achieve this goal can be very different from the collective ownership of means of production, the redistribution of wealth, and that's what I can pass to. But this is the main problems that capitalism had, and now socialism and mixed economies defeated.
Pedro, would you like to reply?
First of all, hello João and Javier, and yes, I would like to reply, of course. There are some problems you pointed out in capitalism, such as the relation between the employer and the employee. First of all, I would like to mention that this relation is good. It is efficient. If the employee who sells a product, which is labor, it's not a product but it sells labor, has an incentive to sell it properly and work well and be a hard worker, and this will bring efficiency. Moreover, if the employer doesn't treat well the employee, someday he won't be capable of having employees. So I think this relation happens because it is a win-win relation.
Situation, yeah.
There's another problem you pointed out was the overexploitation of resources. The fact that in some cases there is an overexploration of resources, in fact, but in other cases, companies and firms and people look in the long run, and capitalism has many of these things. People who look to the long run, and in that sense, many people and firms have tried to be sustainable. Plus, consumers, are having more attention to products and the way they are made. If the product is made in a sustainable way, there will be more people interested in the problem. And another thing you also pointed out was the existence of oligopolies. In fact, it is a problem because in some cases, some ideas in sectors dominated by big national companies can't flourish and grow, and that's bad and inefficient. But in another way, in another sense, it is important to know that these oligopolies just work because they are efficient, because people want their products.
But the efficient, their efficiency can be the inequality between the people, because the main people, the CEOs, gain a lot of money, and their employees are exploited by these CEOs. And
It depends. It depends again. It depends on the companies we are talking about, and what I was going to say next. It's how to combat those problems, the so-called market failure, and there are some ways. Indirect taxes and subsidies or quotas are typical ways to combat this, but also regulation in workers' rights, conditions, etc. And this does not mean that the state has to own the factors of production and distribution. That is socialism. Socialism happens when the state owns factors of production and distribution. Moreover, if the state owns them, there is no incentive to be creative. Capitalism happens naturally, as people want to exchange things with others. They give them a value. Currently, this value is defined by a price. So, again, if this wasn't benefit for society as a whole, capitalism would die.
Okay, Pedro, this one's for you. We have already talked about the failures of capitalism, but could you explain us what are the main failures in socialism?
Yeah, I think Marx's theory is wrong in many senses. Not only in practice, but also in the theory itself. And socialism, which I mentioned, the state ownership of factors of production and distribution, is a solution Marx presented. It's not only Marx who presented socialism, but he's a really important figure in it. There are some assumptions he made. First is that hierarchies are bad. We have the ones in power and the ones oppressed by them. Some hierarchies have this, it's true, but that's not for all cases at all. For example, family. Mainly in our capitalist countries of Europe, having sons and daughters is expensive. People don't gain money. It's not profitable to have kids, but people have it. It's not a relation. It's a relation in power when parents raised up their children, but it has also other factors. Parents care about their children in order to them to be happy, and of course, in some cases, parents make things wrong. Some child may just be annoying, and the reaction of his father or mother may be just shut up because I'm your mother, and that's wrong. It's important to explain, but family is not a relation of oppression. Another problem he talk about hierarchies, that hierarchies as only power, but hierarchies without competence won't survive. In the long run, they just die. Hierarchies are not bad. They came from our nature. Just look to the natural world. I won't talk about lobsters, don't worry. I'm not Jordan Peterson. But lions, for example, have hierarchies. Some hunt, others raid the cup. The males fight for power, and the one who is best will be the boss, like the chimpanzees, wolves, etc. It's our relation. Food chains is another hierarchy. Hierarchies are present in nature. We can stop them from appearing. They are genuine. Power is not necessarily bad. It is freedom and responsibility. It depends on how we use it. Capitalism as a hierarchy. The more efficient go to the top. There is an incentive to work hard by our freedom. Our podcast, in a sense, is capitalism. Although we don't receive money from it, we want to sell a product. At least it costs time. And if it is good, people will listen to it. If not, they won't. Another thing, Marx has mistakes in history in the way he looks to history. For example, he looks to the Roman Empire and he says that there are the owners and the slaves. Yes, that's a hierarchy of power, and that's not just fair. I think we all agree in that. But there is also competence. Look to the success of the army. We can look to feudalism. We have the landlords and the serfs. Some power. Yeah, the landlords were born with a better background in relation to the peasants by a huge difference. But serfs who lived better lived because they were more efficient. Of course, but this is not fair here because efficiency of peasants was not
Maximized.
It was not maximized, exactly, and it depends mainly on the water and factors that they can't control. Capitalism, Marx see it as the businessman versus the workers. But in capitalism, mainly in our modern capitalism, better workers live better. It's very productive. There are social lifts, for example, the army, education. In the army, I will talk, it's not capitalism in terms of profit, but it's a similar relation. Regardless of who you are, in the capitalism armed forces, let's say that, they better go to the top. There is a hierarchy of competences. There is no capitalism of armed forces, as I'm saying, in terms of profit. Moreover, capitalism respects free will. Hard workers and productive people have more options. Society benefits in the long run. In the beginning, of course, we look to the times of Karl Marx, and there was an exploitation of workers, and unions did a great job there. Capitalism is, I think, it's moral. It forces people to survive doing good things. If people do to the others and accept good products, will survive and live better. It respects freedom. So socialism, on the other hand, instead of making the cake bigger, it defends we should divide it equally, which is not necessarily fair. Some people work hard, and because of that they have more profits, and if all people who work differently have the same profits, that's not fair. Workers get to, and so Marx proposed that workers get over businessmen, and there will be another elite who rules for the others. But this hierarchy is not good. The ones who get to the top don't get there because they are competent. It's almost power, and this will lead to inefficiency, corruption. Concluding, I think I've spoke a lot. Socialism doesn't work. It's immoral in my point of view because it doesn't respect freedom. People produce for others to be rich, regardless if they deserve it or not. Some will do well in product and produce a lot, but others, it's our nature. I think I would fall in this temptation. Just enjoy from others' work. And moreover, socialism is also inefficient. People who have no incentive to be creative. How do we measure equality? We look to houses, and each house is different. What do? We construct all equal houses, but then we are not using a resource which is a good house. I will end with an analogy. Imagine a class, and we have the grades of the students. Some are better because they work hard or they are smarter, others not. Imagine if we use capitalism in this system. Everyone gets the same grade. Best students people won't work hard to achieve their objectives.
I agree with some points that you made, but I think we have to analyze what's in the center of these what you say is inequality.
Mm-hmm.
People that are explored and people that explore the others. For example, if I was born in a well-off family and you are born in the slums, you don't have the same opportunities as I have, and you are always in the long run. You are always behind me just because I was born in a family that could provide me with opportunities for education, for good health, for books to read, for theater place to watch. I will always be in the run that is our life, I will always be at the front because I have more opportunities that you do, because just because I was born in a family that has more money, that probably my father is an employer and your father is an employee, and this relation has made me lucky and made me, what can I say, made me a lucky person.
It's unfair.
It's
Not
unfair.
fair.
It's unfair. If we have a system that is in the best interest of all of us, that collectively owns the means of production and distributes the results from these means of production equally for all. This does not imply that we crush creativity. People can express themselves and do what they are best to do, but they have equal gains. People are not explored just because they were born in a family that couldn't provide them with opportunities. Furthermore, a collectively ownership of means of production is in the best interest of all. So we will not ruin our environment. The environment is ours. We need to share it with everybody, and we take our gains from it. So we do not want to ruin this. The contrary is true in capitalism. I am a businessman and I want to make more profit as I can. So I will explore the environment. It's a tragedy of the commons. For example, with fishing. If I have a fishing boat and others have fishing boats, my boat, I want to fish all the greater quantity of fishes that I can. So because if I do not fish the fishes, the others will do it for me, and they will gain the profit. If the sea, the profits from this sea or from this lake where I fish are divided by all, we will all want to protect this system, because our gains and our profit comes equally comes from this lake. So I want to protect it. Another point I would like to make is that in capitalist societies, there is a problem that is crucial. Politicians are not detached from businessmen, and people that want to maximize their profits will obviously make lobbies. In some countries that they are more powerful than others, to pass laws that are in favor of them, to protect these industries, to protect these businessmen, and the politicians will be influenced. If they don't have the power or the will
or the strength
to oppose this system, they will obviously be crushed by the will of these businessmen. I want to give an example. For example, in India, Coca-Cola was seen as the great symbol of Western society, and they will come to India to help our citizens to improve their conditions of life. They went to a village. They obviously bribed the politicians to make an industry there. And people that before of the Coca-Cola arrived lived from cattle farming and from the soil. Now work for a Western company that pays low wages, and their former lifestyle is ruined because Coca-Cola is produced with water, with lots of gallons of water. So the water in that village from the lake is now a desert. They cannot go back to farming because there is no water. They cannot go back to cattle production because there is no water for the cows to drink. I will just finish, Javier. Don't worry. I just want to say that when people own collectively a thing, they want to protect it in order to not ruin the thing that they own together, because it's in the interest of all not to ruin it, not to ruin it. And societies and environment are the thing that we can own collectively.
We're talking here about problems of extremes, extreme capitalism and extreme socialism. However, some people argue that communism has not yet been tried. João, what do you think of this?
Obviously, socialism, when it was born as a philosophy and as an idea, had very different people that thought of it. And Marx was a very important one, we cannot deny it. But the system that... there are major differences between what we see as communism and what we see as socialism. For example, in communism, the goods and services are distributed by the individual need, when in socialism, goods and services are distributed based on the individual's contribution to production. People need to contribute in order to receive their wealth, or to receive the profits that this industry and the place where they work makes. So people just cannot just rest and do nothing and expect to receive a share of the profit. People are incentivized to produce more because all people will receive more equally. Communism has never been tried to some extent because pure capitalism has never been tried too. There are also
Thank God.
yes,
I'm not a pure capitalism.
yes, there are not pure ideologies that we can impose in societies. Pure communism, it's an utopia, like pure capitalism. That's not a utopia; it's a dystopia, because a pure capitalist world would be a world of disaster and exploitation. We take, for example, the USSR, where people think is a symbol of communism. It's not. It's true that was at the Communist Party that had a communist ideology, but they had a lot of traits of capitalist, because what was formed was a clique of politicians that owned the profits from the industries. The proletarians and their leaders, Lenin, then Stalin and the other presidents, and the tiny group of the Communist Party leaders owned the profits and were like kings and dukes of a country that produced for them. It's not communism. Communism the state will disappear, and the welfare of all will be provided just by the people. People will act in the interest of all. Not the state will not be needed, because the state needs to be eliminated, because the state does not, and the proletarians will not be able to provide this welfare for all. I think that's the difference. From.
Do you agree, Pedro?
May I reply? Well, first there are some problems you pointed out in capitalism. You talked about different backgrounds, and I think we need to respect people's freedom to give the best they have to their sons and daughters. Okay, I will give you an example later about that. And that's the reason why I think capitalism is better when there are social lifts. For example, the army, education, scholarships that help people, if they work hard, to grow in life, and etc. And you talked about unsustainability again, and I think in socialism that's not quite the best sustainable system we have seen. Just look to West and Eastern Germany and compare them. When communism and socialism fell, we discovered that the Eastern Germany was far more pollutant than the other. There is a problem in exploitation of resources in capitalism. I think we need to worry about this problem in the long run, but there are solutions. For example, quotas that limit these problems. And you also talked about lobbies. I agree with your idea, but the other thing is that politicians also need votes, so they can't be fully against workers, because I mean it's almost whole society that works. So I think one group, the businessman has the money, the workers have the votes. So I think it will have an equilibrium. Okay, the other I would no want if socialism has been tried. I think yes, and it's always got wrong. There will be shortages, persecutions, etc. Because freedom is not respected. Everything is struggle and fight. You in the USSR, Lenin had to give a step back in the new economic policy. In China started growing once it allowed capitalism and free market to appear in certain regions. Angola was growing and getting richer, and communism bring corruption. Of course, sometimes capitalism failed also, but once it respects freedom, it dies for its own. Once people stop having benefits by it. Another thing, you talked about your view about socialism. I think that's quite an utopian, that because how can the state measure what each people deserve? I think the capitalism is the best way we can measure that. Of course, there will be some differences and things that are not fair. And another thing is that the fact that I have to give to the state, to give back the thing I produced and the profits of that, it's inefficient. Concluding, socialism is bad in the theory also, as I have explained. If each of us, Javier, João and I, if João had 99 euros, it is not fair if I and Javier took 33 each from you. If we are starving, you will give us the money because you want us to survive, sell your products, etc. Or but if you don't want to, others will have will want for us to survive. So, and there are social institutions in capitalism that solve these problems.
Most of the people argue that the solution is not on the extremes, but rather in between. However, the discussion remains about where is that solution: in a state with more capitalistic measures and a small interference of the state, or in a state with a big state and interferes in the economy and that assures that nobody lacks anything. Pedro, what do you think about this?
Well, I think capitalism is better because people are free. There is an incentive to be creative. As time passes, people with lower backgrounds in terms of income will be able to succeed in life if they want to. If they want to, because schools, the army, or university scholarships help them in that to work hard.
João?
I will just briefly explain. Do you want to live in a society where the state cares about you? And what we have, what we have achieved with socialism is it's amazing. We have in Western states we have access free education for all, regardless of background, healthcare, public housing. All people can vote, women and men. Equality has never been as good as it is now. Do you want to live in a society that cares for you, that the interest is the preserving of all people, or do you want to live in a society where people compete to be better than the other, to crush their fellow colleague because I want that scholarship, as you said, I want that place that you have, or do you want to live in a society that people want to help each other, have a common goal, have common profits that are divided by all, and people want to live caring about each other and doing the best to improve their condition as a group, as a collective.
Thank you both for this debate, and also to our listeners. I hope you enjoyed and learned new things with it. We will be back later for another episode, and don't forget to share the podcast with your friends and family.